Fengshen. Introduction to a phoenix clone at the beginning. Regenerated Deng Chanyu from Fengshen. Faced with the impending calamity and the situation of 9 deaths and no life, ordinary people have no resistance. Fortunately, there is a phoenix clone to rely on. Deng Chanyu said that the phrases "heavenly bird descending from the sky" and "phoenix singing on the Qishan Mountain" are all fake. Have you asked my phoenix clone? Have you asked me about the heavenly stone in my hand? Go back and wait for death. Chapter 1. Deng Chanyu and the Mysterious Stone. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A series of da-da sounds rang out, and a jujube red warhorse was galloping rapidly in the school field. The red knight on the horse's back clamped his legs on the horse's belly, and his hands hit it in a series. Every time he raised his hand or raised his arm, it seemed to have some kind of wonderful rhythm, and one after another, stones emitting colorful brilliance quickly hit the grass man several meters away. In the high-speed running of the warhorse, the flying stone statue is like having eyes, flying in a straight and curved line. Every time it is released, it will accurately hit the fatal spot of the grass man. The warhorse shuttled back and forth, like the grass men cutting wheat in the school field. Without exception, all fell to the ground. Sigh. The female knight tightened the reins, and the warhorse's forehooves were fiery red, like flames. After receiving the command, it took 2 steps forward and then stood still. It turned back in a humanized way, complaining to its owner, as if saying that it had not run enough. In the afternoon, let's go out of the game and let you have a good run. The female knight patted the neck of the warhorse. After reaching a consensus, Deng Chanyu dismounted and took off her helmet, revealing a face with eyebrows like emerald green and eyes like autumn waves. She threw the helmet to the maid on the side, returned to the field, picked up the 5 shining stones that had been fired one by one, and then personally pulled her beloved horse back to the stable, carefully combing its mane from left to right and top to bottom. Ma air, you must be healthy and healthy. In the future, when we run away, we will rely on you. The warhorse hissed twice, and she quickly picked up fresh grass on the side. In order to keep the warhorse in its peak state of strength and explosiveness, she also specially added some vegetables. The horse was focused on eating grass, and she took out the 5 shining stones one by one and wiped them carefully. Deng Chanyu had all her heart set on running away, but she was not prepared to eat or die. She carefully caresses each of the 5 radiant stones to ensure that the next use will not delay the fighter jet due to tactile issues. It's better to die than to die by oneself when the enemy dies. This body has to be said to be fully equipped with hidden weapon talents. Kong Xian, who claimed to be the first person under the sage in the original time and space, chased after Deng and Luan all over the map, but such a fierce Kong Xian was beaten away 3 times by Deng Chanyu with flying stones. Can you believe it? This achievement is much more valuable than the throwing a sword at the first-generation Hokage from 800 miles away, in Jiaodu. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that Kong Xian felt that the small broken stone was not a threat and chose to carry it with a hard face. Deng Chanyu's achievements are brilliant, but unfortunately, the killing power of Wuguang's stone is too low, just like scraping, making it difficult to cause too much damage. She wiped the stone while secretly sighing. In a world where saints hold high and immortals who have practiced for millions of years always say they die, her ordinary self had a bad start. The revival of Zhou and the destruction of Shang were the general trend, but now Deng Chanyu is on board the broken ship of the Shang dynasty. You definitely have to vote, but you can't vote too early. If you go to vote for Shichi now, you might be sent to the Tenju formation by the old blackguard Deng Randeng to die. You should know that even the leader of our own camp, such as King Wu Gfa, was sent out to die once. Deng Chanyu from the original time and space didn't catch up with this incident because she was the enemy of Shichi at that time. No matter how gloomy the lamp was, she couldn't bring enemies from hundreds of miles away to fill the 10 absolute formation, could she? It shouldn't be too late to join Shichi. If you don't get enough reputation and end up on the list, you can only be the 6 Harmony Star Lord, who matches the marriage. The statement, there are celebrities on the list of gods, cannot be true or false. It is unclear whether everyone is on the list regardless of whether they compete for their names, and whether they do well or not, or whether the list is empty and whoever dies first is on the list. The previous kind was really helpless, and could only strive to integrate into the circle of Jiang Zia and Huang Feihu, striving to secure a position where, less work, more money, and closer to home. If it was the latter, then she would strive to survive in the catastrophe and successfully live to the end like Li Jing in Yangjian, which is her hope. After completing her daily routine training, she returned to the general's mansion of the Deng family. The Yin Shang in the world of Fengshen is completely different from the Yin Shang in history. Deng Chanyu doesn't quite understand political matters. In the super-large military camp of Sanshan Pass, she can only see military things. The casting technology here can almost reach the level of the Yuan and Ming dynasties. Generals who use Fangtian painted halberds and iron maces will grab a large number, and lock armor and scale armor are standard protective equipment for generals. At first, she thought it was fresh, but now it's understandable. Don't ask, the existence of gods and Buddha has promoted the development of productivity and improved production relations. Walking through the long corridor of the mansion, I saw the maid Hongxiao struggling to hold a large book. The little maid couldn't wave her hand and could only shout, "Miss, the book you want is specially borrowed by the master from the Chaoga garrison." As a military general, Deng Chanyu still had the strength to carry a book. She took it with one hand and said, "Thank you very much. I have nothing to do here this morning. Let's go out and play with these girls." "Really?" The little maid's eyes lit up. "Really, go ahead quickly." "Oh." Deng Chanyu walked into the room carrying a thick book. Taking off her armor and putting on casual clothes, she picked up the ancient book called Qiwu Ji and flipped through it. On her right hand was a fist-sized, oval-shaped, and colorful stone. It doesn't look like a crocodile egg, it doesn't seem like an ostrich egg either. It's definitely not a fossil, is it? She held a record of strange things and tried to find out the origin of this strange stone. At the moment before crossing, she encountered this stone. In order to avoid the oncoming vehicle, she panicked and kicked it. The huge pain caused by the collision between her big toe and the stone is still vividly remembered. The person put it on Deng Chanyu's body, and for some reason, the stone was also brought over. Deng Chanyu is skilled at using 5 light stones as hidden weapons. The room is filled with large and small stones, as well as various cutting and polishing tools. Looking for an outsider, it is impossible to tell that this is a girl's boudoir. I don't know what kind of gambling stone warehouse this is. The maids don't care at all about having one more stone or one less stone in their young lady's room. Deng Chanyu couldn't just take it lightly. She didn't dare to tell anyone because she seemed to hear the call of the stone. The voice is very weak and cannot be heard without careful listening, but there is definitely something. I have tried all the methods I could think of, such as burning, flooding, dripping blood, and holding a stone in the rain, but I don't know the true purpose of this stone. Today when I flipped through the Strange Things Chronicle, I still didn't get anything. It seems like an ordinary stone. Time quickly arrived in the afternoon. Deng Chanyu found his cheap father, Deng Jiogong, who was leading troops to patrol the walls of Sanshan Pass. Deng Jiogong was tall, with a strict face, divine eyes, and a beard of 2 feet long. He was skilled in using a long-handled large sword weighing 81 pounds. After his death, old Deng was also titled Qinglong Xingjuan. It can be said that besides not having a red face and not liking to read spring and autumn, he was basically the template of Guaniri. Father. What's up? My child's Wuguang stone has been worn out a lot recently, and I want to go out of the past to find some new stones. This is not something new, Deng Jiogong thought for a moment and said, "Go and come back quickly." Yes. Deng Chanyu's martial arts are not top-notch, but they are not bad either. Coupled with the world's top flying stone hidden weapon, it is not very dangerous to pass alone. After the gatekeeper opened the door, she relaxed the reins and restrained herself inside the pass for several days. With a roar from her beloved horse, accompanied by Deng Chanyu's laughter, she began to run wildly on the Lus Road. Chapter 2. Battle. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Leaving Sanshan Pass, this run is over 100 miles. Toward sunset, Deng Chanyu arrived at her destination. The afterglow gradually dissipated, and the sky was covered with a golden halo. On the river surface, the clear blue water rippled and flowed with silent notes. The pebbles at the bottom of the river presented different colors and shapes, like vibrant gemstones. Deng Chanyu took a deep breath, and at that moment, all the worldly troubles faded away. Only this beautiful scenery appeared before her, making people feel peaceful and beautiful. She asked the warhorse to go aside and drink water, took off her shoes and socks, rolled up her pants, and went down to the river to touch stone. Wuguang stone, as the name suggests, emits a dazzling and colorful bright light when launched. Ordinary pebbles cannot meet her requirements. Based on her previous experience of touching stones, it must be the type of stone that can emit light on its own to be considered a 5 radiant stone. As for why do stones shine? Is there radiation? She doesn't know, nor does she want to know. The river was not turbulent, so she whistled to the warhorse, gesturing to follow her. Then, while searching, she walked upstream. The scene of the sunset, stream, and young girls converging together was extremely harmonious. However, the tranquility was still disrupted. The sudden sense of crisis made Deng Chanyu alert, and she saw a python more than 10 meters long by the riverbank, with a bowl-sized mouth, spitting out its crimson tongue at her. She seemed to be able to see her reflection in those blood-red eyes. Deng Chanyu did not panic, on the contrary, she calmly observed the movements of the python. The python raised its head slightly, its cold gaze filled with violence and killing intent. Deng Chanyu slowly lowered her right hand to her waist. Clever fingers flicked and opened the bag containing the 5 radiant stones at the waist. The Wuguang stone needs to be polished, and the newly picked one has a slightly poor texture and is not suitable. She is still using a very familiar old stone at this time. Her wrist turned, and just before the python launched its attack, the 5 light stones burst out like a stream of light from her fingertips, emitting a dazzling light and hitting the python's head straight. The flying stone did not hit the python's eyes as she had expected. At the moment when the flying stone was shot, she panicked for a moment as it brushed against the python's forehead. The traveler thought he had fully inherited Deng Chanyu's flying stone skills before, but when it came to life and death, he realized that he was still one step behind. The flying stone angered the python, and the foul smell and tail of the python rushed towards her. Deng Chanyu's long sword, which was vigorously swung, was blocked by scales, and the huge impact force made her fly out completely. How can I face strong enemies like Yang Qian and Kong Xian in the future when I can't even defeat a broken snake? Deng Chanyu, who was in mid-air, finally overcame the last bit of weakness in her heart due to her anger towards herself. Either you die or I die, there's nothing to be afraid of. Fight it. She took out another 5 radiant stone and, with the help of the last rays of the sunset, took out her usual training level. At the moment she saw the green gaze of the python, she threw it without hesitation. The python let out a terrifying roar, its tail slammed against the river, and then a blood mist burst out of its left eye. Enjoy. Deng Chanyu felt a violent emotion take the opportunity to vent, and the heavy pressure on her heart dissipated. At Sanshangwan, 100 miles away from the river, a mysterious stone in her room also rose up with her changing mindset at this moment. The red light in the 5-colored light was flourishing, and the visible darkness of black, white, blue, and yellow faded. Some extraordinary energy was rapidly accumulating, and several small cracks appeared on the surface of the stone. Evil beast, where are you running? Deng Chanyu, who was fighting, succeeded with a single blow, doubling her confidence. Taking advantage of the python's roar, she fired another flying stone and blinded its other eye. Such a large python, bringing it back to Sanshan Pass can at least allow her to blow for half a month. I don't know if Deng Chanyu had ever hit such a large prey before, but it's her first time. She feels uncomfortable not showing off. The python's intelligence was higher than expected. It realized that it was blind and had transformed from a hunter to a prey. It turned around and ran, and Deng Chanyu chased after it. The low damage of Wuguang stone has been exposed, and apart from hitting the eyes, it causes almost no damage to other areas. During low visibility and high speed running at night, her hit rate was still terrifyingly high. Unfortunately, the flying stones only caused the python to shed some scales and flesh, and in the end, the python still rushed into the forest from the riverbank. The final glow of the sunset fell, and the forest became incredibly quiet at night. The rustling sound of the wind blowing through the leaves covered the sound of the python's passage. Deng Chanyu regretfully stopped her steps, facing the pitch-black forest. She had no need to take risks. During the battle, the blood was on her head, but now she has calmed down a bit. A certain signal of blessings to her soul made Deng Chanyu unable to resist turning back to look in the direction of Sanshan Pass. What's there over there? The signal came and went quickly, and she shook her head, thinking it was an illusion that appeared after her battle. She was about to turn back the way she had gone, and as soon as she took 3 steps, she heard a loud roar coming from beside her. A black bear over 2 meters tall had been hiding in the dark for a long time. At this moment, the person stood up and slapped her head with a palm. She clasped the flying stone between her fingers, secretly calculating the distance between each other. Just as she was about to hit the flying stone, another powerful black-skinned wild boar rushed out from behind. 1 against 2. The cooperation between the two fierce beasts can be called tacit understanding. As usual, Deng Chanyu first blinded one of the black bears in front of her with a dazzling flying stone. The reason why Xiaodeng Feisher is strong is mainly because he combines the excellent characteristics of the Sun Fist and Xiaoli flying knife skills. He went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to first blind, and then hit his eyes. After Feisher released her hand, she didn't look at the result at all. She held a long knife in her hand, accompanied by a strong sense of war in her heart, and turned around and struck the right neck of the wild boar with a knife. The wild boar unleashed its ferocity and collided head-on like a shell. Deng Chanyu's eyes slightly froze, suppressing her restlessness. She forcefully stabbed the long knife into the neck of the wild boar, with the blade stuck between her bones. With a push of her legs, she stepped on the wild boar and leaped up with the help of force. Her agile figure flashed in the air, completely defeating the beating of the black bear beside her. She allowed her long sword to remain inside the wild boar's body, and her left and right hands shot out in a series, like a celestial maiden scattering flowers. The flying stone first broke the black bear's eyes, and then a finger-sized blood hole was punched in the forehead, heart, and neck. Ignoring the howling of the black bear before death, Deng Chanyu used the same flying stone technique to deal with the wild boar. She stood on the body of the wild boar, her long hair hunting in the cold wind. She expressionlessly pulled out her long knife and calmly wiped the blade on the wild boar's mane. Cheerful. The fierce battle between life and death and the peaceful sparring of generals were completely different, and she enjoyed the pleasure of dancing with the tip of the knife. The scream of the black bear before its death spread far out in the dense forest at night, with herds of animals flocking in. 7 or 8 leopards, dozens of wild wolves, and finally even a colorful giant tiger and an eagle hovering in mid-air, ready to launch a surprise attack. They walked out of their nest and surrounded Deng Chanyu from 4 directions: southeast, northwest, and north. At this moment, the beasts showed immense unity, as if Deng Chanyu was their sworn enemy. 3 or 5 wild beasts, she thought to herself that she could deal with them. There were too many wild beasts at the moment, and the herd's eyes were all shining with green light. If she continued to charge inside, she would be foolish. With a roar of a tiger, the herd began to launch a tidal wave of attacks. Chapter 3. Freshmen. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The Wugwangshi aimed at the eyes of the wild beasts, and with the help of the dazzling light, Deng Chanyu could roughly see the enemy's position. She dodged left and dodged right, relying on her flying stone skills to engage in a deadly battle alone against the surging herd of beasts. At this moment, in the direction of Sanshan Pass, 100 miles away, the slowly dormant mist inside the mysterious stone was once again aroused by the passion that erupted during Deng Chanyu's battle. This time, not only did it last longer, but the mental fluctuations caused by the emotional outburst were much higher than the previous one. Spiritual excitement has been accumulating. When Deng Chanyu killed the Tiger King in the distance, quantitative change finally led to qualitative change. The inside of the mysterious stone seemed to become a small world, where the pure air rose and the turbid air dropped. The most essence and the spiritual energy transmitted from Deng Chanyu across the sky converged. The pressure inside the stone, facing the pressure of the life and death of the beasts, gathered together. After breaking through a critical point, the emptiness became reality, and the impossibility became possible. A new life was born from the flame. Deng Chanyu, who was 100 miles away, immediately felt that her body had turned into a scorching flame. Her consciousness suddenly crossed the spatial distance and instantly returned to her room at Sanshan Pass. She is Deng Chanyu, also the life that just emerged from the mysterious stone. The consequences of being distracted during the battle were extremely serious. Seeing a flaw, the soaring eagle swooped down from her back to her shoulder, tearing off a 2-finger-wide flesh and blood. Grass. It hurt so much. The pain brought her consciousness back to her body, causing Deng Chanyu to feel dizzy in her head and bleeding incessantly in her back. Before she could think about it, she felt a warm current gushing out from the deepest part of her body, first restoring her strength, then repairing the wound, and finally flowing to her limbs. The warm current improved her physique in a subtle and silent way. Her strength, speed, and reaction ability have all improved to varying degrees. Although there are not many warm currents at this moment, it is definitely a great help. The flying stone with its colorful radiance once again exerted its power, and one wild beast after another was pulled apart and kited to death. When she drew her sword and killed the Wolf King, the herd finally collapsed. The fox and hyena ran away first, followed by the jackal and leopard, and finally only 2 fierce-looking black bears remained. They all ran away. Are you stupid and still fighting me? The black bear was very human, quickly turned around, and was surprised to find that his allies had run almost as fast, and those who ran fast might have almost reached home. 1 male and 1 female, 2 black bears were also anxious, landing on all fours and running back with a loud cry. Deng Chanyu suspected that there might be some treasure in the forest, otherwise the herd wouldn't be so united. She did not rashly enter the dense forest to pursue, but instead sat down in place, soothing her mental exhaustion and reflecting on the strange experience that had happened to her. What is this? Her consciousness returned to the new life side, warm and completely controllable by her, without any accidents. This was a clone that relied on her soul. However, the clone had just been born and was very weak, requiring a huge amount of effort and energy to move her body. From the current perspective, it is not clear what kind of clone it is. She seemed to have 2 perspectives now, and in order to adapt quickly, she had to rub her brow and think for a while. The unexpected situation at home made her not want to delay for a second. The treasures in the forest couldn't escape. Deng Chanyu strode to the river and found her own horse. Without stopping any longer, she quickly rode back to Sanshan Pass. Returning to Sanshan Pass, the heavy gate was tightly closed, and Deng Jiogong was extremely strict in governing the army. Even if there were no enemies nearby, he would not rashly open the gate. Although the Deng family has been operating Sanshan Pass for a long time, there is a 200,000-strong army here. King Zhou has a supervising army in the pass city, and Deng Chanyu does not want to cause trouble for his cheap father. She waited until dawn, when the soldiers opened the door, and then she led her horse into the gate. She briefly explained the reason why she didn't come back last night, and then, citing exhaustion, she returned to her room step by step. "I'm tired, take a break first, call me during lunch." She dismissed the maids and then looked at her clone. Previously, she was afraid of being discovered by the maid who was tidying up the room, so she had already controlled her clone to hide in advance. At this moment, she carefully lifted her clone out from behind the screen. "Isn't this a little sparrow?" At this moment, she finally saw the full face of her clone. A thin and small ball, without a single feather on her body, with a big head and a long neck. The clone's eyes seemed to be closed and open, lying on her palm, her whole body was soft and prone. From the perspective of the clone, one can also see Deng Chanyu's face, as if looking in a mirror, which feels extremely magical. "Come on, let's feed you something to eat first." Sigh. "No, this is me. I should be here to eat. Let's take a sip of milk first." She has been unable to enter the city gate, which is not without benefits. She has nothing to do and bought some food from farmers outside the gate. She prepared milk, oats, millet, wheat, and searched for the book garden www.zhaozuan.com, as well as 2 half-dead caterpillars. I don't know what the clone likes to eat. She first arranges the food word for word, and then shifts her consciousness. The clone stood up slowly like an 80-year-old man, first looking at the caterpillar and instinctively thinking that it could eat, but Deng Chanyu was a bit disgusted. "Milk can also be consumed, but after drinking it, I definitely feel uncomfortable, so I ended up choosing oats." The clone eats very little at once, and these things have a poor taste, but at the current stage, they are indispensable. Deng Chanyu only feeds once every hour. For a whole day, the clone was eating and sleeping, spending the rest of the day eating. As the body, Deng Chanyu was also in a daze. She stayed in her room for a whole day, and when it was time, she had the maid bring her food. The rest of the time was spent lying in bed, letting go of her thoughts and helping the clone absorb and process those innate, personal identity information. She saw the immortal volcanoes in the south, and saw the somewhat blurry figure of the ancient mythical beast, the ancestor of birds, Yuan Feng. Covering the sky and blocking the sun, the fierce and majestic image of the ancestor of birds surpasses all descriptions of beauty and strength in the world, even if severely injured and dying. This is a powerful life form born from the creation of heaven and earth. What has a virtue character on its forehead, a righteousness character on its wings, and a benevolence character on its chest pattern are all nonsense from later generations. Yuan Feng is a chaotic divine beast that controls the law of fire, and has nothing to do with benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust. At this moment, Deng Chanyu's gaze seemed to cross a distance of billions of miles. With the help of her clone as a medium, she entered the depths of the immortal volcano and completed a brief meeting that had been concealed from the heavenly way. The giant creature, which had long been trapped in a certain cycle of life and death, scrutinized her for a moment, then nodded lightly in recognition. Chapter 4. Nestlings and Vermilion Fruit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Deng Chanyu stayed in the room for 7 days citing physical discomfort. The clone is not a sparrow, not so delicate. Eggs can be eaten, and if meat is chewed by Deng Chanyu, it can also be swallowed whole. After a week of rest, he was completely bald and his sparrow-like appearance completely disappeared. Nowadays, the newly born birds have snow-white fur, crystal-clear pupils, sharp and cute red beaks, and cone-shaped feathers on their tails, which are colorful and elegant with mystery. This state can be considered as officially entering the chick stage. It seems that her body size has increased by a circle and her appearance has also increased significantly. However, in reality, Deng Chanyu is worried and her clone is very weak, with a severe weakness. The heavenly Tao does not allow the Phoenix clan to be born. Whenever the Phoenix clan wants to use their innate abilities to rebirth, they will encounter the suppression of the heavenly Tao's rules. Death, nirvana, suppression, re-death, re-nirvana, re-suppression, according to theory, will continue in such an infinite cycle. Encountering Deng Chanyu was an accident, as advocated by the leader of the Tongtian sect as the one to escape. Even so, this nameless Phoenix tribe lost everything in countless failed nirvana, including its name, past, consciousness, and everything else. The situation of the clone is extremely bad, with a sharp decline in life level, reaching the lowest point along the way. With Deng Chanyu's spiritual energy, she has now regained the recognition of the heavenly way through her clone, and has been reborn from the ashes. However, this rebirth has once again consumed the already limited source of life. A clone requires the essence and blood of the Phoenix clan, top-notch natural resources and treasures, an off-ground flame flag, a flame environment, and many, many things to restore its original state. These things, not to mention Deng Chanyu, are probably not easy to handle on King Zhou's side. She opened the door and strode towards the treasure trove of the Deng family. As the dominant force in the southern sky, the Deng family, which suppressed the southern marquis and the 200 southern marquises through a powerful pass, must have some family background. Not at this time. When will it be further? Deng Chanyu's mother died early, and now there is only one aunt surnamed Huang who manages major and minor affairs in the mansion. She had a good relationship with her aunt and said she wanted to go around the treasure trove, but the other party agreed without much thought. Deng Zhebao's treasury was filled with precious armor and swords, but she had very few natural and earthly treasures that she could use. In the end, she only chose a palm-sized jade plaque, a broken gemstone, and 15 bamboo-like plants. Returning to the room, she nodded again. Previously, it was her who chewed up the food and fed it to the clone. How can she chew on these jade plaques and gemstones now? It's strange to gnaw on bamboo, isn't she a panda? After repeated experiments between the clone and the main body, she found that by controlling the clone to lie on the jade plaque like a hatched chicken, she could slowly absorb the essence of the spiritual energy. When the spiritual energy was absorbed, the jade plaque would lose its original luster and supernatural powers. This method is also effective for gemstones, but bamboo has relatively less spiritual energy inside and low absorption efficiency outside the body. It is best to eat it and then absorb it through the intestines and stomach. There's nothing to say, just chew on it. When Deng Chanyu started gnawing on bamboo, she realized that her body had become stronger again. The expected oral bleeding does not exist at all. The seemingly hard bamboo can be chewed without much effort. Her teeth are not as good as usual now. Luan, your mother. Deng Chanyu stood in front of the forest surrounded by wild beasts and shouted. The beasts she had previously killed and retreated, such as wild wolves, leopards, and black bears, rushed out in a magnificent manner. The other party looked at it. It's you. Terrifying upright ape. I didn't say anything, let's fight. The quality of spiritual materials in the era of Fengshen cannot be compared to the era of Yuanfeng and Zulong. The Deng family has power and influence, but it has not reached a point where they can cover up everything they want. The clone had been sickly all along, and Deng Chanyu thought about it carefully. She felt that the spiritual energy burst out in the battle could accelerate the clone's recovery speed. The spiritual fire was also a fire of high quality, and she was also concerned about the treasures buried in the forest. According to a more desolate statement, these treasures in the forest were clearly destined for her. Heaven gave them no reward, but they were blamed and immediately killed back. She didn't bring any soldiers and was alone, wielding a sword in her left hand and a flying stone in her right hand, slaughtering recklessly in the herd of beasts. Killed for a whole day, and the next day, she came again. That's his mother. Deng Chanyu's original weapon was double swords and flying stones. Now, as her body grows up, her physical quality as a body has been improved in all directions. This soft one-handed knife is not awesome. Now she can only make use of it flexibly. After another day's killing, the ground in the forest is full of blood and flesh mud, and the river in the distance is dyed red. Chao Runyang. I killed for 2 consecutive days, and on the 3rd day, I felt that the number of beasts in the herd had significantly decreased. I only killed until noon that day, and no wild beasts dared to provoke her. The treasures in the forest were easily found by her, not the top 10 spiritual roots, nor the black lotus that destroyed the world, but 2 ordinary red fruits that bloom and bear fruit for 100 years. They are orange-red, round and bright red, and the rest are gone. In the era of the 3 heroes and 2 clouds of the swordsmen of Shu Mountain, Zhuguo may have been a rare item, but in today's world, it is not very precious. Deng Chanyu took one on the spot, and her clone is important, and her body cannot be ignored. Hot. The energy inside Zhuguo rushes into the heart and then flows to all 4 limbs and bones. She felt a flame burning beneath her skin, and her bones, muscles, and meridians were infused with powerful energy. The endless vitality of Zhaozuiyuan.com began a deep transformation. Zhu Guo used up about 30% of her power, and the remaining 70% was stored by her body. If she finds a way to cultivate in the future, she can be guided to use it. If she cannot find it, these energies can also prolong her life. She needs to take the remaining red fruit back for her clone to eat. She didn't move the roots of Zhuguo. She can't afford to wait for 200 years. Let's leave it here for the next destined person. Chirp. The eagle circled above her head and quickly descended, leaving behind a colorful stone on the ground. Before the dust could disperse, it flew up into the sky with great vigilance. This eagle was the one who ambushed her before and tore off a large piece of meat from her back. I originally wanted to kill him directly, but the clone didn't have the great powers of Annihilation Fire Rain and 5-colored Divine Light. The clone had the abilities to intimidate birds and understand bird language, and along with Deng Chanyu, there were also some low-level versions of the clone's abilities. She heard the eagle pleading for mercy, and after the other party was willing to provide her with some 5 glory stones, she agreed to the deal. At this moment, she carefully examined the new stone, which was the size of a basketball, 2 circles larger than the stones she found at the bottom of the river, and had a more colorful glow. "Where did you find it?" she gestured and asked. The eagle stood on the tree, extending a wing and pointing in a direction. Deng Chanyu looked in the direction pointed by the eagle, then at the river where she had picked up stones before. The 2 points connected, and then along this line, she could extend all the way to the mountains that could not be seen at a glance. She couldn't help but ponder for a moment. Originally, she thought that the 5 light stones were just some shining stones, but now it seems that things are not simple, with causality intertwined. Is there still more secrets hidden deep in the mountains? Chapter 5. Deng Chanyu vs. Taiwan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It has been a month since Deng Chanyu obtained the Phoenix clone. The mountain range that hides the secret of the 5 light stones was ultimately not explored deeply by her. With strength, the benefits obtained are called opportunities, while without strength, the benefits obtained are called disasters. After entering the fledgling stage of stable clone, she received various benefits through backfeeding. When bathing, she could see the scars accumulated from years of martial arts practice gradually disappear, her body proportions became more perfect, her skin was as white as jade, and her seemingly white palms seemed to contain tremendous power. The spiritual energy in the vermilion fruit took a big step forward for the clone from the fledgling stage to the juvenile stage. There are too many impurities in ordinary food, and the clone no longer needs to eat it. At the current stage, what clones need the most are the 4 elements that have survived since the ancient times, namely earth, fire, water, and wind. Perhaps some of these things have been left in the hands of Laozi and Master Tongtian. Do you want Deng Chanyu to find them? Earth, fire, water and wind are definitely not effective, but the chi of the 5 elements of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth can also be absorbed in the day after tomorrow. Deng Chanyu picked up more than 30 bamboo sticks from the Deng family's warehouse, which had 2 spiritual energies of fire and gold. In order to quickly grow up as a clone, she would gnaw on the bamboo every day and then feed it, making her a bit restless and contemplative. Originally, it took almost a month to finish eating. Unexpectedly, Aunt Huang heard from her maid that she liked to take bamboo baths and chatted happily with her. She said that in the vast sea thousands of miles away in the south, many islands have this kind of bamboo, and the Deng family caravan travels back and forth twice a year. If you want it, you dare not say anything else, and bamboo will definitely be enough. Deng Chanyu was a bit overwhelmed, changed to a soft armor, and arrived at the school early. She wanted to hit someone. Too light. She weighed the long spear made of wrought iron in her hand, held it with one hand, and casually danced the firearm before shaking her head. "Colonel, I don't know what Miss Deng's family is up to today. Don't you usually use double swords? Why do you think about using long weapons today?" Deng Chanyu did not provide an explanation. She no longer admires the double swords used by her predecessor. The swords are too light and not suitable for her own use after her strength has increased. She, who is still working in the circle of generals, has a clear advantage in using long weapons. The captain gestured for the soldiers to bring a big knife, but she still felt light. Besides, her father used a big knife, her brother used a big knife, the vanguard of the Deng family used a big knife, and she still used a big knife here. Are we the big knife gang? Too light, too light. The soldier brought her 2 sledgehammers, and Deng Chanyu didn't even try them. She just gave them a blank glance. Have you ever seen a female warrior use a sledgehammer? I see you're like a hammer. In the end, Deng Chanyu chose a square sky painting halberd. The Fengtian painted halberd weighs 36 pounds, about the weight of a bucket of water. No matter how heavy it is, it can actually be used, but it's not convenient. It's great now. Look at me holding a halberd, but in reality, I'm a hidden weapon expert. Do you think I'm only good at hidden weapons? Feng Tianhua's halberd can also pierce a hole for you. Upon hearing that she was going to change weapons, Deng Jiugong and his eldest son, Deng Chanyu's brother Deng Xiu, quickly came to watch. Deng Jiugong is not particularly skilled in halberd techniques, but he knows the basic usage of chopping, splitting, picking, and stabbing, which can teach Deng Chanyu in several aspects. Old Deng raised his halberd and shouted loudly, "Watch it, this is Qinglong going out to sea." The halberd blade followed his arm and charged forward, then tilted upwards. This is the creation of heaven and earth. With the left hand in front and the right hand behind, the halberd slashed down from head to face. This is Qinglong crossing the river. His wrist turned and his halberd swept straight ahead. Deng Chanyu. Just listening to the names of these moves is like a knife technique. It looks even more like it. Old Deng finished dancing all the way called Jifa, which was actually a sword technique. He stood proudly with a single halberd in hand and gently stroked his long beard, saying, "How much did my son remember? Do you want to practice it again for my father?" The halberd technique already possesses many characteristics of the sword technique, and its moves are not a problem. Deng Chanyu has a clone of the Phoenix clan. Flying birds have always been known for their sharp eyesight, not to mention the Phoenix clan. Her eyes are now similar to the Sharingan, and she can remember ordinary moves by looking at them once. The child rehearses once, please ask the father for guidance. She held a big halberd and imitated the style of old Deng, chopping and sweeping all the way, arousing some of the combat memories belonging to the Phoenix tribe. Many of human martial arts originated from wild beasts. At this time, in addition to the original 4-character technique of chopping, picking, and stabbing, she integrated the skills of birds hunting prey and added pecking, hooking, and cutting moves. Ha! Old Deng was a bit surprised. Is his daughter's martial arts talent so high? When he taught his daughter double swords before, he didn't really think it was very eye-catching, he just made sense. What's the situation now? Is it true that my daughter is particularly skilled in using long weapons like the Fengtian painted halberd? As an observer, he could see that Deng Chanyu's moves were not refined enough, and there was no coherence between the moves, with obvious shortcomings. However, these shortcomings were seen from the perspective of Lao Deng. Faced with the joint attack of Huang Feihu and Neza, Old Deng can persist in dozens of moves without defeat. If Neza doesn't use the magic weapon Qinquan Circle, he can't even defeat Old Deng. He is the world's top warrior with a different perspective from ordinary people. From an ordinary person's perspective, Deng Chanyu wielded a square-drawn halberd dance with a murderous aura, making it a reliable battlefield meat grinder. Big brother Deng Xiu looked at the big knife in his hand, and then at his sister's long spear that couldn't be splashed with water. He was a bit puzzled, can this kind of sister fight on her own? Okay, Miss Deng's martial arts are extraordinary, and I am willing to come and learn 2 moves. The tall man with a face like a live crab and yellow beard under his chin walked out of the crowd, but before Deng Chanyu could answer, he went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and took a long sword from the weapon rack without hesitation. Deng Chanyu knew the other party and knew that he was Lao Deng's beloved general. She said boldly, okay, come and fight. Old Deng gave her a sneaky glance. She could only pretend to cough twice and say, cough cough, that. General Tai Luan is willing to teach. I am grateful to you, General. Please. Miss Deng, please. Deng Chanyu held the Fang Tian Hua halberd and waved it fiercely towards Tai Luan. Tai Luan's body moved and he slashed a powerful blade diagonally. Deng Chanyu quickly dodged on her side and pressed down with her long spear in her hand. Tai Luan stood steadily on both feet, raising his sword to block each other. The weapons of both sides collided and made a crisp metallic sound. The two of them each performed their own stunts, playing fast and quickly, and it was hard to see who had the upper hand for a moment. Deng Chanyu suddenly turned around and jumped up, using the technique of bird hunting. With her long halberd, she drew a curve and slashed towards Tai Luan. Tai Luan originally wanted to laugh, but this kind of jumping up while hitting was actually a very beginner's behavior. Many generals understood the principle of, don't jump, don't jump, don't jump, but he didn't expect Deng Chanyu's move to be fast, with a fierce and murderous aura hitting his face. He could only hold on to the handle of the knife, fly and roll, quickly fall to the ground, and his long spear hit the ground, splashing at dust. Tai Luan saw that Deng Chanyu's momentum had passed, and suddenly stood up. The long sword shook suddenly, spinning out a metal flying illusion, and the dazzling blade fell towards her back. Deng Chanyu felt a crisis and instead of retreating, she spun her body and accelerated her sweep with her arms holding halberds. With a loud click, Tai Luan's long sword blade was shattered head-on. Miss Deng's excellent martial arts skills are admirable. It was General Tai Luan who gave way to the young woman. The general's broad-mindedness was admirable. Chapter 6. Going to Nandu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Deng Chanyu and Tai Luan exchanged a few words of praise, and the competition came to an end. Winning a move in the competition doesn't mean anything. As a confidant of Old Deng, Tai Luan will definitely not engage in a fierce battle with Miss Deng's family, and the nature of the game is more extensive. Deng Chanyu did not use the flying stone skill on her side. With the halberd technique she had just learned, she truly displayed 20 to 30% of her martial arts skills. Tai Luan has excellent martial arts skills and rich combat experience, but he is not as strong as Yang Jian's flying stones hitting his face and sparking sparks. If it were a life and death battle, with 10 steps apart, Deng Chanyu would kill him every minute. In the next few days, she will continue to hone her martial arts skills, adapt to the growing strength of her body, and continue to feed her clones. Jiang Zia, when encountering Master Wen, would first use his whip to charge up more than a dozen moves, not to mention Neza and Yang Jian. In the world of Fengshen, even if he becomes a cultivator or an alchemist, his martial arts skills are still useful on the battlefield. Practice more now, don't lose out, maybe you can save a little life someday. There are many military officers in Sanshan Pass, some of whom use long halberds. She used will I writing to copy each other's martial arts, taking the essence and discarding the dross. One of them, Zhao Sheng, attracted her attention. This guy not only uses the square halberd, but also has a unique skill of spitting out several feet of flame in battle. The cultivators from the cabin background all have professional skills such as water escape, fire escape, divination, drawing symbols, refining weapons, and alchemy. In order to distinguish themselves from traditional cultivators, Zhao Sheng, a person who can breathe fire, is collectively referred to as a strange person and extraordinary person in the current environment of the Yin and Shang dynasties. Deng Chanyu attached her consciousness to her clone, and through her powerful divine consciousness, she could sense that Zhao Sheng, a strange person skilled in spitting fire, had some spiritual objects with fire attributes in his home. What the fledgling clone needs the most is the fire attribute spiritual object. The spiritual objects in Deng Jiabao's library are mostly the wind and water attributes in the acquired 5 elements. The bamboo that seems to be edible for a lifetime is actually fire and metal, but she is tired of it now and wants to change her taste. In the city of Sanshan Pass, a total of 200,000 soldiers of the Yi merchants were stationed. No matter how loyal Deng Jiogong was, King Zhou could not have entrusted so many troops to a single person for long-term command. All kinds of sand mixing were the basic operations. Deng Chanyu observed secretly for 2 days, and Zhao Sheng was clearly sent by Chaoga to monitor the Deng family. There's nothing to say about that. If you don't grab it, who will you grab? On the branch of the moon, Deng Chanyu controlled her clone to come out and commit the crime. Dragons can be big or small, can be promoted or hidden. As an old opponent, the Phoenix clan also has similar abilities. The clone now possesses some flying abilities and, under the control of Deng Chanyu, stealthily schemes over the beams of the house before hiding his tracks and sneaking into Zhao Sheng's mansion. Zhao Sheng has a friend named Sun Yanhong. Deng Chanyu used a 7-legged relationship to have someone give Sun Yanhong a bottle of wine that had been stored in the cellar for many years. Now, the 2 brothers are pushing glasses and drinking it. The scope of the clone's divine consciousness is very large, and with just a sweep of the small courtyard, one can find the spiritual object they need. That is a quaint small cauldron with a piece of sandalwood about the length of a little thumb inserted inside. Dao men don't need sandalwood incense. Those who use this thing are the future Buddhas and Western religions today. Great discovery. Deng Chanyu began to sum up in her heart. The flourishing of Buddhism is a matter of traveling to the West, which is not close to the Fengshen side. However, even though Buddhism is weak, it is still a huge entity. When people take it seriously, they can pick their feet and clean her up. What are the essential skills for a traveler? Reporting and withholding. She couldn't do anything to scare the snake, so she controlled her clone to slowly exit Zhao Sheng's mansion. Returning to the bedroom, she pondered for a moment. If she could take advantage of the situation and embrace the legs of Taoism, it would be possible to take on certain risks. Unfortunately, she still has no contact with people from Taoism. This Zhao Sheng has a dual background in Buddhism and Chaoga. Although he is seen as a sesame mung bean in the eyes of both major powers, if he were to act rashly, it would definitely cause trouble for Deng Jiogong, the general of Sanshan Pass. Deng Chanyu temporarily gave up on dealing with Zhao Sheng and devoted herself to practicing martial arts, making rapid progress. She danced her long halberd with lightning speed, and even practiced the traditional martial arts technique of 2 horses and 1 wrong kick, drawing out her iron mace to fiercely hit the opponent's back of the head. Not to mention the flying stone skill, she is a reliable first-class general in the world. If she uses flying stones, she dare not say that no one else is her opponent in Fengshen Pass. Even Zhao Sheng, who can breathe fire in battle, is not capable. Xiaoyu, your complexion is really getting better and better. Aunt Huang looked up and down at Deng Chanyu's skin. She was also from a general background, and from childhood to adulthood, she had contact with all the generals. At this moment, she felt that this Miss Deng's skin was not average good. As a martial arts practitioner, touching, crawling, rolling, and hitting were inevitable, and even natural beauty could not withstand it. Unfortunately, this principle seems to be ineffective on this Miss Deng now. Is the effect of soaking in purple bamboo really so good? Do I also want 10 pounds? Women should still treat themselves better. Zhaozuan.com. She immediately issued an invitation. The caravan is going to the south, and you still have a lot of bamboo to soak in. Anyway, you have nothing to do at home. Why don't you go with your aunt? You haven't been to the south, and it's actually quite fun there. Going south. Deng Chanyu hesitated for a moment. Nowadays, the Shang dynasty occupies the central region of the world, with a prosperous country and strong people. The eastern barbarians, southern barbarians, western Rong, and northern D tribes are all handed over to the four major feudal lords to deal with. While expanding their territory, they can also weaken the strength of the four major feudal lords. Fengshen Pass was the southernmost part of the territory actually controlled by the Yin Shang dynasty. However, within the scope of the entire Chinese culture of the beauty of dress and etiquette, the southern part of Fengshen Pass was controlled by the southern Bohu and 200 feudal lords, and further south, it was the place of the barbarians. The role of the Deng family is to suppress the southern marquis and the 200 feudal lords in the south. This suppression is not all about suppressing them, but rather fighting back and forth. The Deng family has many closely cooperating feudal lords in the south. At present, the authority of King Zhou is extremely strong, and the four major feudal lords are like grandsons every day, being called upon and waved around without even daring to fart, let alone leading troops to rebel and attack the Yin and Shang dynasties. The relationship between Fengshen Pass and Nanbu appears to be harmonious on the surface. Feeling that there was no danger in this trip, she immediately nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go with my aunt." She also wants to go south for a stroll, maybe she can come across some natural treasures. These things cannot be waited for at home. She doesn't have such a deep fortune, so going out for a stroll will at least give her a chance. Aunt Huang's execution ability was very strong. 3 days later, this quiet-looking woman changed into a locked chain armor, carried a sword around her waist, and carried Deng Chanyu, who was dressed as a man and a young master, along the river. They headed downstream to the capital of Nanbu Chongyu, Nandu. Chapter 7. Deng Chanyu's Enemies. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chaoga is the capital of the Yin Shang dynasty, the center of all directions, which goes without saying. The Shiqi city of Shibua Marquis Jichang can be said to be surrounded by mountains and rivers, making it a famous place of mountains and rivers. Jiang Huanchu, the Marquis of Dongbua, ruled over Donglu and was situated on the mountains and by the sea, making it a top-tier place of victory in the world. Beibua Ho Chongho, who was the iron pole of King Zhou, with Chongqing as its capital. It was situated on the mountain and by the sea, backed by Qintang Pass, and was an important town in the north. The southern capital where Deng Chanyu and the Deng family caravan arrived was the capital of Nanbu Chongyu. The southern capital is located in the middle reaches of the Yangtze River, serving as a hub for Shiqi and Donglu. The northern Chaoga and southern barbarians all have merchants coming here to sell goods, making it a true hub for the 9 provinces. Deng Chanyu gently shook her folding fan, dressed in white, standing at the bow of the boat, gazing at the prosperous market from afar. The sunlight reflected on her cheeks, making her look picturesque and her expression transcendent. The slender white clothes were graceful and stretched, emitting a cold and proud atmosphere. Their eyes were like smoke and mist, staring at the people on the shore. After dressing up as a man, she not only maintained the softness and elegance of women, but also carried a sense of indomitability and detachment. The little maid Hongxiao felt a bit seasick and followed her gaze to look out. Mississippi no, cough cough, young master, what are you looking at? I'm looking for natural resources and treasures. Of course, she couldn't say that. She lightly tapped the two sides of the river with a folding fan and gestured to the mountains and rivers, saying, Southern capital is truly a battleground for military strategists. Look, here we have the copper of Zhongshan, the benefits of salt fields, countless bribed barbarians, and the essence of the 5 lakes and 4 seas gathered in southern capital. If we halfway through, I can't go on anymore. With a support of 200,000 soldiers and 1,000 soldiers, if the Deng family occupies the southern capital of Nanbu and has soldiers, money, and territory, they can go south and attack the north. There won't be anything wrong with Shiqi. The safety of Shiqi is indeed safe, and it is difficult for outsiders to attack, but it is also extremely difficult to launch an attack. Sishiguan, Chuanyuanguan, Tongguan, Lintongguan, Mianxi, from west to east, all levels are on the same line. Do you want to rebel? You just need to level up and fight. Without adjusting your life to 30, you won't be able to break through. How about heading from south to north? Just a Sanshan Pass, whose territory is Sanshan Pass. Deng Chanyu shook her head and immediately felt very strange. How could she have such thoughts? She believed that the great apocalypse of the gods was affecting her true intentions. She silently recited several times her words about investing in Shiqi with capital, and secretly warned herself to be cautious and persevere in the great apocalypse. The little maid didn't understand her subtext, holding her chin in both hands and staring blankly. Aunt Huang still has a lot of business matters to talk about with those feudal lords and tribal leaders. Deng Chanyu's mind is now full of clone affairs, and she is not interested in these trivial matters. The Deng family and Nan Bohu are not hostile now. She thinks to herself that the art of flying stones is invincible in the world, and does not feel any danger. She strolls around the city with her little maid, looking for so-called opportunities. The commerce in Nandu is extremely prosperous, with abundant resources that are 100 times stronger than Sanshan Pass. After separating from Aunt Huang, they strolled around the market and were dazzled by the dazzling array of goods. Deng Chanyu didn't even know the purpose of many things, and the salesperson didn't explain them either. The quality was solely determined by her eyesight. She could only slightly close her eyes and switch her consciousness to the clone of Sanshan Pass. She controlled the chick to sit in her room very humanely, flipping through the curiosity book, using this search engine to find the answer, and then coming back to discuss the transaction. Slow is a bit slow, and even the clone is exhausted enough. The victory lies in not making a big mistake. Ha! This is a good thing. Shop owner, I'll take this piece of metal. Deng Chanyu saw a golden piece of metal that emitted a dazzling light. After researching the strange things records, she found out that it was a spiritual material called sun gold. She reached out to buy it, but she didn't expect someone next to her to take a liking to the metal. Deng Chanyu turned her head to look. I saw a woman with a peach blossom-like face, sharp eyes, and wearing a bright red patchwork jacket, also looking at her with spare light. The shop owner is a barbarian with a tsingy face and bare feet, and an old face. He spoke a bit blurry, and the situation where two guests were staring at a spiritual object at the same time left him a bit at a loss. Deng Chanyu smiled and said, Sister, I saw this thing first, but because I was short of money, I closed my eyes and thought for a while. Now that I have figured it out, can you please let me know? The woman in the red patchwork jacket sneered, Little sister, your hesitation precisely indicates that this thing is destined for me. Go back quickly, don't cause trouble for yourself. What is meant to be with you? Is your attitude so overbearing? Deng Chanyu's inner strength of Duanluan Rumu has risen again. Sister, does your name appear on this? Do you mean, fate means fate. The woman looked contemptuous and pointed at the old barbarian. Let this old barbarian speak for himself. The old barbarian clearly knew the woman in the red patchwork jacket and nodded and said, this spiritual material naturally belongs to Miss Gao. The woman in the red patchwork coat reached out to take away the shimmering spiritual material, but didn't even glance at Deng Chanyu's side. The barbarians want to sell it themselves, and Deng Chanyu has no choice but to force it. She sneered and turned around with her maid to leave. The woman in the red patchwork jacket looked at Deng Chanyu's disappearing figure and looked for the book garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com, feeling lost in thought. In fact, she was also unhappy in her heart. Deng Chanyu couldn't explain her feelings clearly. Although it was the first time we met, there seemed to be a slight discrepancy in our Chinese characters, and the degree of this discrepancy was still deep. Women are proficient in divination and have great talent in this field. Intentionally calculating on the spot, but unfortunately, under the cover of the great calamity, the heavenly mystery is in chaos, and those who have practiced countless elemental guilds cannot see the future clearly. Not to mention, if she forcibly divines, she will inevitably lose a lot of her life. Encountering someone on the street just because you feel uncomfortable and risking your life for divination. It's really unnecessary. She quickly put this matter behind her mind. The sun gold is a great harvest, and she can't wait to take this spiritual material back to refine treasures. On the other hand, Deng Chanyu returned to the inn and immediately went to inquire about the origin of the woman in the red patchwork jacket with the staff of the Deng family. She had a vague sense before, just like Zhu Guo, that piece of sun gold was destined for her. This fate was not too deep at first, but I don't know what happened. After the woman in the red robe took the sun gold, she seemed to have lost something extremely important. Deng quickly reported the information he had discovered to her. Deng Chanyu was greatly surprised. For the first time after traveling, she was so surprised. You said that woman's name is Gao Lanying. Yes, Mississippi. Many people in the market know her. I heard that this miss from the Gao family also comes from a noble family and is a Chowga person. It is said that she followed strangers and learned the art of the left way in her childhood, with unpredictable abilities. Deng Chanyu doesn't care about whether this person is a Chaoyang masses or Chowga masses at all. She only cares about this seemingly tacky name. Gao Lanying. This is Deng Chanyu's archenemy in the original work, the kind of archenemy with 100% purity. Chapter 8. Layout. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gao Lanying is skilled at using the Sun God Needle, which is usually placed inside the magic treasure red gourd. During battles, she releases a flying needle and uses strong light to blind the enemy's eyes. Afterwards, she swings her sword and cuts. Is this route very familiar? Deng Chanyu and Gao Lanying fought against each other twice in the original God-Sealing War. The first time, Deng Chanyu took the lead and, without saying a word, Wu Guangshi hit the face. Unfortunately, his patching skills were too poor, allowing Gao Lanying to run away. The second time, Gao Lanying was prepared and took the lead. 49 Sun God Needles were released in unison, and after becoming blind, Deng Chanyu was killed with a single blow. The moves of the two are actually similar, basically the one who takes the lead wins. Do you think this is over? Wrong, this is the beginning. After Deng Chanyu's death, she was named the Six Harmony Star Lord, and Gao Lanying was named the Peach Blossom Star Lord. The former is responsible for managing marriage relationships, while the latter is also responsible for managing marriage relationships. The six harmonies represent the harmony between husband and wife, with the meaning of harmony, beauty, and the combination of yin and yang leading to the birth of all things. The meaning represented by peach blossom in marriage is relatively negative. When facing each other, saying that someone committed a crime against peach blossom is not a good word. It's not like a third party or knowing 3 when 3. Basically, this is the same trick. Deng Chanyu, the Six Harmony Star, is in front of the matchmaking, while Gao Lanying, the peach blossom star, is behind the instigation. Both sides are arguing against each other, and neither can complete their KPI. When being a person, relationships are extremely poor, but when not being a person, relationships become even worse. When Lao Jiang was in theft, he sealed the two of them in the same office. Is this something that people do? Deng Chanyu has no control over the matter of deity and post-death matters, and currently can only work hard on the human side. Will Deng Chanyu be able to live to the end by killing Gao Lanying? This has nothing to do with good or evil, she just wants to survive. Auntie, give me 10 servants. What happened? Well, I had a little argument with a cheap woman today, and I want to give her a hard time. Aunt Huang, who was calculating the accounts, didn't think much about what kind of temperament the generals had these days. She knew too well that it was normal to cause trouble, but it was strange not to cause trouble. With the Deng family's level, as long as it wasn't for killing King Zhou's son in the street, it was basically not a big deal. She immediately allocated 10 of Deng Chanyu's servants from the 50 she brought. The Deng family carefully selected 3,000 soldiers from a 200,000-strong army as their servants. These soldiers are completely out of work and don't need to do anything else every day. They just need to train and practice hard. The Deng family is responsible for supporting their entire family, and each of their servants is skilled in archery and horsemanship, making them a formidable force on the battlefield. This is the foundation of the Deng family's power in the south. When Huang Feihu escaped from the 5 passes, he also carried his own servants and generals. As for how the system of generals and servants emerged in the Yin Shang kingdom of a slave society, there is no need to elaborate on this. Deng Chanyu assigned tasks to 10 servants. I don't know if Gao Lanying has refined the sun god needle at this time. With the idea of being careful, she needs to purchase some materials to use against the enemy. She said to several people, "Do you see the 5 light stones in my hand?" Everyone nodded in unison. You can purchase materials that can block this strong light, preferably transparent and lightweight. What is the best technique to deal with Sun Fist? It's sunglasses. She doesn't understand the principles of polarization and wavelength cancellation. It's impossible to grind lenses by hand, but in the mythological world right now, there are many unscientific materials. Let's first look for them. The servants were confused and thought that Miss Deng had asked them to come out and chop people, but this was the result. She asked 5 people to purchase materials, while the other 5 stayed. Which of you has a sharper tongue? 4 people looked at a tall and thin person together. What's your name? Xiao Rin Deng Ai. Deng Chanyu said, okay, that's a great name. So, I'll give you a task. You can go to Aunt Huang's place to get the money later. After assigning tasks one by one, she dispatched the little maid Hongxiao back to Sanshan Pass, using the excuse of taking clothes to secretly control her clones and follow her to Nandu. The chick is too weak, it's okay to leave it at home. It's in the mixed fish and dragons of Nandu, and she's really worried about her level of dual-line operation. If we want to fight for life and death now, we must be bolder. The covering aura, powerful divine consciousness, and ability to control low-intelligence birds of the clone can all provide assistance for her upcoming battles. After receiving the sun gold, Gao Lanying returned to her mansion in Nandu. Her general is 1 level behind the Deng family, but not less than the cost of a courtyard. Even if it's just a temporary stay, the environment, location, and size are not bad. She held the sun gold and repeatedly assessed it, confirming that it was the spiritual material produced by the ancient book that when Hou-Yi shot down 9 suns, the essence and blood of the sun scattered on the earth, mixed with some turbid energy. As the saying goes, in the era of Hou-Yi, this kind of spiritual material was garbage. When thrown on the ground, those great witches were too lazy to bend down to pick it up, but nowadays, it is a precious material. Gao Lanying learned the method of refining the sun god needle from a foreign person as her teacher in her childhood. Unfortunately, her master was a wild person, and she died early, so she didn't teach her much. Fortunately, Gao Lanying had a remarkable intelligence and relied on her unique skills, combined with her own understanding, to walk her own path. She refined 749 fine needles that looked like tiny hairs and stored them in the red gourd left to her by her master at zhaozhuiyuan.com. Nowadays, these things can only be called divine needles. Only by adding solar gold can they become true sun divine needles. Returning to the courtyard, she instructed her subordinates not to disturb her if they had nothing to do, and then she began to refine treasures in seclusion. 3 days had passed, and she had just warmed up 40.9 divine needles with her own divine sense. Not to mention the ritual, the preparation work had not been completed yet when she was interrupted by the unusually noisy sound outside the yard. It felt like hundreds or thousands of ducks were arguing outside her yard. What's the situation? A Taoist who has achieved success in cultivation is not afraid of interference, and can calmly handle even the harshest environment. She is not capable. What's going on? Gao Lanying came out tired to watch and found a lot of people outside the door. Why not disperse the crowd? Can't you handle such a small matter? She asked sternly. The Gao family's servants knew that this young lady was difficult to serve, so they just shook their heads. One sentence or two is unclear, and we don't know what's going on. Miss, it's better for you to see for yourself. Gao Lanying was a bit angry, originally with a cunning nature, and now she was even more impatient. She snorted coldly and pushed open the door. At first glance, it was so lively outside the door. In the crowd, there were 3 levels outside and one shoulder to another, as if going to a market. The originally spacious street was squeezed to a standstill. She looked around for a moment and found that most of the people gathered in front of her door were elderly men and women in their 60s and 70s. The elderly looked happy, as if they had found money when they went out. Gao Lanying has come to Nandu not once or twice. She never knew that there were so many elderly people in Nandu. So the question is, what are these people doing? Chapter 9. Sending Gao Lanying to the list. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gao Lanying ordered his servants to push aside the crowd and walked to the center. There were more than 10 men sitting cross-legged on the ground with their eyes closed. These people dress differently, with the only difference being that each of them is carrying a large pot on their head. The pots come in different sizes, some with a hint of vegetable oil, and some are simply broken pots. What is this doing? She turned to ask her servant. According to them, it seems to be something called Qigong, which has some kind of heavenly human induction and sounds quite powerful, said the head of the household in a low voice. Daring not speak loudly is for fear of causing public anger. No matter what era, old men and women are unappealing entities. Do you think these old men and women are all from the countryside? Wrong, they are from Nandu, and many are even nearby residents. The head of the household has seen a constable in a yamen call one of the old lady's mother. The relationships between these elderly people are intertwined. My son.in.law, your son, and her nephew are scattered throughout every corner of the city. If they are provoked, even if they are possessed by the god of war, they will die here. Strong dragons don't suppress local snakes. The servants don't know if Gao Lanying will get angry. Will they vent their anger on them? There's no way. Qigong. Gao Lanying muttered this somewhat unfamiliar vocabulary. For a moment, she was just practicing aimlessly, and she really needed an authentic cultivation method. Before she could ask again, a very wealthy man suddenly shouted, "Here, here. I feel like cosmic energy has been infused into my body. Ah, what a powerful energy." His words were like a signal, and the men around him began to bark strangely. Master, you have profound skills. Please share some of the cosmic energy with us. Master, don't worry about third senior brother. Give it to me, give it to me. I am the heavenly spirit root, and I can withstand it. Senior uncle, I saw it. Are these misty things the cosmic force field? It's so strong that I can reach the realm of returning to the void today. Junior sister, hold my hand and I'll give you a share. The old men and women clapped and cheered on the side, and the atmosphere at the scene was extremely lively. Gao Lanying was stunned and looked around, only to find that master not far away showcasing her kung fu. I saw a skinny old man standing in place, full of advanced demeanor. With a tremble of his fingers, 7 or 8 disciples rolled out like gourds, one of whom was like a top, spinning back and forth. Is there any magic in this move? Why didn't I see it? Is it a new trick of Western religion? She looked confused. What kind of qigong do these old men and women come here to practice when they don't stay at home in the hot weather? She felt that there must be some secrets she didn't know about. Next, she saw a very human scene. Several qigong masters took in apprentices on the spot, and as long as they checked their pulse, they could detect a certain spiritual root, including 3 spiritual roots, 4 spiritual roots, 5 spiritual roots, as well as highly qualified double spiritual roots and heavenly spiritual roots. The explanation was easy to understand, but after listening to it once, Gao Lanying remembered it. The old men and women flocked to it, hoping to use qigong to make themselves live 100 years longer. It's okay if they're not selected. The master's disciples will give each unsuccessful candidate an egg. Don't underestimate this egg. The joy, excitement of the elderly are beyond words. They are all the most authentic expressions of emotions. The old people shouted loudly, saying that each person was given a bag of salt yesterday, and today it was replaced with eggs. They didn't know what tomorrow would be, and everyone's face was filled with anticipation. Upon seeing this scene, Gao Lanying was deeply moved, and for a moment, she was inspired by her own blindly crafted cultivation theory. Is this humanity? Oh no, it's not good. She suddenly realized that everything from qigong to making eggs and salt was just a facade. She quickly returned to her room. Even with some anticipation, when she saw the red gourd she had placed on the table and disappeared, she was still so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Don't let me find you. This magic weapon was too important to her. She immediately abandoned her concerns, placed an incense table, arranged 9 coins according to the position of the 9 palaces, and then began to calculate the loss of longevity yuan. The hexagrams are vague and uncertain, and involve a large number of people. She even suspects that half of the people from Nandu are in her hexagrams, and these vague figures seriously affect her calculations. She had to identify them one by one, but did not notice that her door was gently pushed open a crack. Dare the sneaky villain come and harm me? Gao Lanying is truly a general from a family background, and her reaction speed is extremely fast. Even if her mind is most affected by the hexagram, she still reacts after something unusual appears. She is similar to Deng Chanyu before, skilled at using a pair of double swords called Sun and Moon. While shouting, she bends down and slides a shovel through the incense table, pulling out the double swords placed at the head of the bed. Sun swords are adept at defending, while Moon swords are adept at attacking. Just as she put on a defensive posture, she saw a ball of something that could not be clearly seen attacking her. She didn't want to, she just drew a knife and cut. Pop! A large amount of lime filled half of the room. Gao Lanying, who was staring at the enemy's movements, felt as if her eyes were burning with pain. Shameless villain. She cursed and, relying on her previous impression, kicked the incense table. Deng Chanyu's 5 light stones pierced straight through the incense table, but with such a obstruction, the flying direction of the 5 light stones slightly deviated and brushed against Gao Lanying's forehead. Zhaoshuyuan.com, it's you. Deng Chanyu. Gao Lanying also investigated the woman who had a grudge against her, and it was not difficult to obtain information about Deng Chanyu. As soon as she heard the sound of flying stones breaking through the air and being both skilled in hidden weapons, she guessed the other person's identity. However, she didn't expect that this Miss Deng was really cunning. First stealing magic treasures, then sneaking attacks and throwing lime, where is your warrior's dignity? Gao Lanying waved the sun and moon knife on her own, dancing so hard that water couldn't splash in. The sword was as dazzling as snow practice, and her feet kept retreating. Deng Chanyu smiled silently. Using deception to quietly steal the enemy's treasure is a very divine and Yang Jian's method. But I have to say, the effect is amazing. The other party lost all their opportunities, and she didn't hesitate anymore. She used both hands to throw stones. The first 5 light stone was chopped off by Gao Lanying's sun blade, but her sword technique was also disrupted for a moment. In less than a breath, another 5 light stone meteor hit her chest like a chasing moon. With a wow sound, the female general of the great merchant sprayed a blood arrow. Nowadays, Deng Chanyu's hand strength is much stronger than before, and when she hits Yang Jian's face, there are still sparks on her face. If she hits Gao Lanying, who is a mortal body, there will be no problem. You despicable person. You will be chopped into meat sauce by a random knife in the future. Gao Lanying's eyes regained some vision, but the previous 5 light stone hit her chest, causing her sternum to shatter and blood to flow. The knife technique was extremely scattered. She angrily used the Japanese sword as a hidden weapon and quickly threw it out. Deng Chanyu had sharp eyes and quick hands. First, a flying stone pierced through Gao Lanying's forehead. Then, she grabbed the handle of the Japanese sword on her side and held it with her back hand, cutting it horizontally at Gao Lanying's neck. The blood arrow flew up more than 3 feet high, and the female general of the great merchant covered her neck with blood spurting, her face full of unwillingness as she fell into the pool of blood. Chapter 10. Deep Planning. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Through the battle of sealing the gods in the original time and space, it can be seen that Deng Jiogong and his daughter must have been loyal to the Yin Shang, but not to the extent of death loyalty. You ordered me to fight against Shiqi, and I went. I used as much force as I could. If they tried to persuade me to surrender, my side would surrender. For the Deng family, there was no difference between Yin Shang and Shiqi, but it was just a change of boss to continue working. Gao Lanying and her husband Zhang Kuei, who is still unmarried, are not true loyal ministers of the great merchants. When the Shiqi army broke through the 5 barriers and gathered 800 feudal lords from all over the world, and the army was only 1 step away from Chaoga, Zhang Kuei and Gao Lanying were still guarding the small town of Mianqi. The couple did indeed have the ability. At this time, the leader of the Tongtian sect had cooled down, and the Jijiao had turned into flying ash. Facing the Tiantuan formed by the disciples of the Xuanjiao sect, the couple defended the city in isolation and even killed a large number of Shiqi generals, including Huang Feihu and Deng Chanyu. Among them, Zhang Kuei's loyalty is still a bit lacking. When the situation was unfavorable, he said that he would evacuate Mianqi and return to Chaoga. Gao Lanying had always been the one who kept him steadfast, and this woman's loyalty to the big business was definitely 100. The false loyal minister of Deshang, Deng Chanyu, killed the real loyal minister of Deshang, Gao Lanying. She did not leave the crime scene immediately, but switched her perspective to the nearby clone and used the high divine consciousness of the Phoenix clan clone to observe what would happen next. To put it seriously, it was not until Zhang Guifang attacked Shiqi and Jiang Zia ascended the Kunlun Mountains that Yuanshi Tianzuan handed over the list of gods to him, and spent a lot of resources in Shiqi to build the miracle of the Fengshen platform. Later, when the generals of both sides clashed with the immortals, it was a scene of one soul heading towards the Fengshen platform that could not be moved. In theory, it is only after the construction of the Fengshen platform that the official start of the Fengshen ceremony is considered. However, in reality, the people who died before the construction of the Fengshen platform, such as Boyi Cao and Shang Rong, have also been enshrined. At this moment, Deng Chanyu was watching in place, wanting to know where Gao Lanying's soul would go. Unfortunately, the divine consciousness of the Phoenix clan clone was not as good as Yang Ren's divine eyes of looking up at the sky, looking down at the earth, and understanding all the things in the world. She only saw a blue light gathering next to the corpse, and then disappeared in the blink of an eye. With the last trace left, it seems that the soul has gone to the west. As for where exactly did it go to the west? I don't know. It's okay to look at the body and ask her to follow that trace all the way to the Jade Void Palace. She dares not. Next is the popular touching of the corpse segment. The red gourd and the 40.9 divine needles had already arrived, and soon, the sun gold, which was the main ingredient for the ritual refining, and a few auxiliary materials also fell into her bag. Gao Lanying's level of Taoist skills is still at the level of black dog blood, stool and urine breaking 8 or 9 dark arts, which is not much higher than the Qigong that Deng Chanyu had the common people of Nandu practice. Both of them belong to the typical law blindness. Gao Lanying's Taoist level is in a mess, but her divination skills are considered unparalleled among the gods and mortals. Tu Xingxuan is on his way to Qishan Mountain, preparing to use the technique of taking the land and turning it into steel. This is the result of her divination. The time, location, people, what to do, and what to take are all clearly calculated, but unfortunately she clearly did not have the habit of writing her professional skills in books and carrying them with her. Deng Chanyu touched it once but couldn't find the skill book, which was somewhat regrettable. The material of the sun-moon double blades was relatively average, and the weapon features were obvious. She left the knife on the corpse. Deng Chanyu quietly left the scene of the crime, found Deng Ai, and asked him to send someone to handle the whole matter. Soon, various rumors began to spread all over the sky. Some people say that Miss Gao was killed by the Qigong master's internal strength of hitting cows across the mountain with a palm strike, some say she was killed by the neighboring Mrs. Wang, and some say she died from absorbing cosmic energy and becoming possessed by the demon while introducing qi into her body. There are various explanations. Nowadays, Deng Chanyu and Gao Lanying have not received the salaries of the merchants. Speaking of them, they are representative figures who are waiting for employment, slow employment, flexible employment, and home-based elderly care. If a general dies, King Zhou will definitely personally intervene. If a commoner dies, will he care? The Southern Metropolitan Government also doesn't care about this matter, especially when it comes to hearing that there are a lot of old men and women involved, and they don't want to worry anymore. They are all neighbors. How can we investigate? For an outsider to investigate their own people. The matter quickly calmed down, but the investigation is still ongoing. Are you planning to use some small favors to win over the people of the southern capital? Recruiting some strong men to gather together for so-called practice is a way. If our army from Sanshan Pass enters the southern capital, with these masters and pre-arranged networks, even if there is no food or drink, all kinds of resistance will probably be minimized. However, I am worried that Chaoga will not let my Deng family occupy the southern capital. Aunt Huang paid no attention to Gao Lanying's death and instead repeatedly asked about the egg delivery several times. The more she thought about it, the deeper she even thought of the plot where the people secretly opened the southern city gate for the Deng family and welcomed Wang Shi into the city. If you can become the new Southern Marquis and complete the class leap, even if you are feared by King Zhou, it's okay. If you can become a boss at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com, who would be willing to work as a laborer? She said with a hint of encouragement, using a plan that she had already seen through you, what are you going to do next? Deng Chanyu. Next step. You may not believe it when I say it, but I was just trying to cover up and steal some spiritual material. She rolled her eyes and remained silent. At this point, it doesn't really matter what she thinks. Deng Ai. Madam. Aunt Huang commanded with great professionalism, following Mrs. previous arrangements, we will continue to carry out the recruitment work. Don't be afraid of spending money. If we spend 1 penny today, we can recover 100 cents tomorrow. I will dispatch some personnel and money for you. During this period, you will stay in the southern capital city. Yes. Thank you very much, madam, for nurturing me. Thank you very much, Mississippi. Deng Ai was quite happy, as she was taking on the initiative. In the next few days, Aunt Huang's business trip was completely ignored, and all her energy was focused on someone's fabricated theory of Qigong. She wanted to check for any gaps and see if there were any defects. The result is a set of things such as spiritual roots, foundation building, and elemental babies. She couldn't see any problems at all, and felt that this theory was very perfect, even perfect, as if there was really such a complete cultivation system. Not to mention deceiving ordinary old men and women and using it to deceive some low-level officials and tribal leaders, it was not a problem. The senior management of Nandu knows that someone is practicing Qigong, and they scoff at it. How could one practice like this? A group of foolish men and women. They are happy that the lower-class people have something to do. Qigong is not obstructed, and as for sending eggs and salt, there is no one to stop them. Who dares to say anything against it? It can be sprayed to death by the elderly.